I should put that speech communication major because it kind of heightens the sense of what people I think they're going to get out of me. But thanks again for the invite today. I appreciate the opportunity to come out and talk with you a little bit about home building and its effects on the economy, not only here in Manitowoc County, but also throughout the state. As Mike mentioned, I do all of the advocacy work for the State Association, for WBA, the Wisconsin Builders Association. We have 24 local associations throughout the state, 5,000 members in total, and we cover, I think my boss aptly describes us as kind of the chamber of commerce for the building industry. Obviously, we have members who are builders and remodelers, electricians, realtors, but we have the folks that run the local hardware store and the attorneys who do real estate closing and transactions. So we try to cover a lot of material, especially in what I do, and that's the advocacy work for the statewide association, tracking legislation on the state level, and then sometimes even more importantly, rules that are being proposed by various state agencies. So I want to talk a little bit about the expense to local government. Obviously, if you want to be intellectually honest, there is an expense to home building that goes on through the process, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the effects that building has on job creation. Talk a little bit about the important trickle-down effect. Obviously, some of these numbers are very large. A lot of that due to the fact that there's so many industries, especially in Wisconsin, that have something to do with the home building and home remodeling industry. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then I will be doing my job as a lobbyist, but to talk a little bit about some things that have been done on the state level legislatively. A number of things last session that we had support for in the state legislature, and now moving forward, some things that we're advocating for in this new session of the legislature that we think, again, will have a positive effect on the industry moving forward. So just a little bit, again, to start off with effects that can be had here in Manitowoc County. I will say that a lot of the numbers that I'm using here can be found online. We have them posted. There was a specific study done here in Manitowoc County that was completed in 2008. Elliot Eisenberg is an economist with our national association, the National Association of Home Builders. He came and did a study specific to this area. A lot of the numbers that I'll mention first are from that study. Again, you can get the complete links for that on our website. And also we have a page that you can access off of wisbuild.org. Mr. Eisenberg also did a state study for us as well. That includes the Manitowoc numbers and a number of local associations that had the study done as well. And then he also did a presentation before the joint committees of the Housing Committee. Both the Assembly and Senate in 2009 got together, had a committee hearing to talk about the role of housing in the economy. And Dr. Eisenberg did that presentation to both of those committees. So all that can be accessed on our website. So first, the effects of building 100 new homes in Manitowoc County in the first year. So we're talking just the initial year when those 100 new homes are constructed. Would call for $1.4 million in revenue for local governments. It calls for $230,000 in expenditures. Obviously the cost there by local governments to service the new housing, and $3.5 million in capital investment for new structures and equipment by local governments. So that's kind of the start of the conversation of not only the positive tax and revenue effects of those 100 homes for year one, but also some of the expenses that go along with that as well. Moving on to years 2 through 15. Typically after year one, those 100 homes will continue to generate dollars. $290,000 in taxes and other revenues for local governments, and $460,000 in local government expenditures to continue providing for the services at current levels. So talk about the first year. Now this is years 2 through 15 moving forward. So after 15 years, and the chart after this will kind of tell the stories as well, the total on that is a cumulative of $13.9 million in revenue compared to $10.8 million in costs. And the costs include annual current expenses, capital investment, and interest on debt. So that again is 15 years. And this chart shows the break-even point on those 100 new homes is about 7 3/4 year. That's with the break-even point. And then after 15 years, you have a net positive for local governments of $3.1 million. So it's safe to say that the initial effect that the cost drivers outnumber what the municipalities get in revenue, but then really the key two numbers of this slide are that 7.5 or 7 3/4 year, which is kind of that break-even point, and then after 15 years with those 100 new homes, you have $3.1 million in surplus. Well, what are the cost drivers? This again is based on 2007 dollars when the study locally was done. What are those dollars being spent on? Education coming in at $874. This is per housing unit, and that bottom number is the property tax of the average home that the study was done for. Education at $874. Police protection at $527. Fire protection at $273. Further down the slides here, there are some significant costs as well. Other general government, I have a feeling when this study was done, kind of everything that they couldn't allocate kind of went into the other general, which actually is the highest expense on here. And then another high cost driver here is $875 for electric utilities, corrections, streets, water supply, sewage, recreation and culture up at $340, and then public transit at $29, at least in this area. Various parts of the country and state has likely higher numbers there, with a total of $4,609. So that talks a little bit about the expense and obviously some of the revenue coming in from those 100 new homes. Talk a little bit, obviously when we have members come, and we just had our lobby day a few weeks ago at the state capitol, talking with legislators, one thing that we always want to drive home is that housing equals jobs. That communities, regardless of where they are in the state, should be welcoming new construction and remodeling for that matter, because it helps with their tax base and it puts people to work, again, not only directly in the industry, but in that trickle-down effect as well. So we look at, again, the 100 new homes in Manitowoc County, $15 million in local income to local residents, $1 million in taxes and other revenue to local governments, and the creation of 360 local jobs. Again, the Manitowoc specific numbers, 100 new homes in Manitowoc County, ongoing yearly impacts after year one, $3.2 million in local income to residents, $890,000 in taxes and other revenues to local governments, and 80 jobs. Now we kind of switch gears here. Again, there was another study that Elliot Eisenberg did for us on the state level. His survey was completed in December of 2009. Again, this takes on a lot of the local associations that had studies done, puts them together. We did a lot of data collecting on the state level as well. A lot of these mirror, obviously in bigger scale, but mirror some of the same trends that were found here in Manitowoc County. This is 1,000 new homes in the entire state of Wisconsin for 1 year, $180 million in local income to residents, $29.8 million in taxes and other revenue to local governments, 3,255 new jobs, equaling 1 new job for 3 homes, which is the same number that was found here in the local community as well. So that's been a huge talking point when we talk to legislators at the state capitol of both parties, talking about why the housing industry is so important to the economy, not only here in Manitowoc County, but statewide. Again, going over the ongoing yearly impacts of now 1,000 homes in the state of Wisconsin, $34.1 million to local income to residents, $12.4 million in taxes and other revenue to local governments, and 690 jobs. I spoke at the beginning about the effect, the trickle-down effect, and I think obviously in Manitowoc County and Sheboygan County, throughout the state, I mean, I have 2 screens of businesses that have a relationship to and important ties to the building industry. I probably missed multiple other companies that aren't on the list, but ABC Supply in Beloit, obviously a huge supplier of a number of different products that go into the home building industry. Ashley Furniture up in Arcadia, A.O. Smith in Milwaukee, Bemis, you have Incinerator in Racine, obviously Kohler Corporation with a number of different products important to the building industry as well. Menards in Eau Claire, kind of along the same lines of ABC Supply. Midwest Manufacturing in Eau Claire. They do a lot of steel roofs, steel siding, or steel roofs and siding. Actually are one of the major users of steel in the Midwest. Milwaukee Electric Tool in Brookfield, Speed Queen in Ripon, Weather Shield up in Monroe, a lot of windows and doors. So a lot of states have this, but I think uniquely here as well, a huge diversity of number of companies that do work that directly affect the building industry. And obviously, if those companies, if the housing industry is in a funk, which it obviously has been in the last few years, these manufacturers and companies suffer, and unfortunately there's been a lot of layoffs and things like that, but we're hoping that things are going to improve, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, the housing economy from 2007 to 2011. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the negative story, but it's been pretty well publicized. Obviously, the housing economy during those years has taken a hit. Really, the housing recession was the worst on record since the Depression, but things are recovering. When we take a look at, when I've talked to members from throughout the state, one of the first things I kind of ask them, regardless if they're a builder, or remodeler, or a subcontractor, how's business? And obviously, when I was asking that question in 2007 and 2008, I wasn't getting a lot of response. A lot of people were, simply fighting for their, the health of their business. Last year, I could tell there was kind of a turnaround on that. I could tell from talking to people throughout the state, they're not as busy as they want to be, but they're definitely busier than they were before. A lot of folks are kind of at that tipping point, I would say, of maybe I'm busy enough to hire somebody, but still not sure if we're going to be able to keep them on board. You bring somebody back at halftime. A lot of people are in that. I think this year, if things continue to get better, I think a lot of business owners in the building industry will hopefully be adding jobs moving forward, because they've gone long enough and they're working, frankly, they're tired of working 13, 14-hour days, and maybe going to take somebody on to help with that overload of work. So 2011 was kind of, it looks like the worst it's going to get. There were only 9,000, just about almost 10,000 homes and apartments built, compared to a 40-year average of over 27,000. So if 12 continues, if 13 continues, hopefully we'll have sustained growth for the first time in a while. Some positive numbers. Building permits for new homes were up 21, almost 22% last year compared to 11. And granted, I have to be honest, I was talking a little bit before we walked in, that 21.6% looks good, and obviously you'd rather have a number on the upside than the downside, but 21% compared off of 2011 is, we still have a ways to go, but again, I'd rather have 21.6 on the upside as opposed to 21.6 on the downside. 12,000 single-family building permits issued in 2012. In 13, we anticipate another percentage of up on the upside of between 20 and 24% increase, and in 2014, hopefully on the north side of 30% increase in those new permits throughout the state. So obviously there's always challenges in any industry, just a few here that we're going to be facing here. Land development, people who are holding land that hasn't been sold, lots that haven't been sold, that industry or that segment of the industry has not rebounded yet. There's still a number of people who are holding on to land, struggling to pay the holding costs, most notably the property taxes of that land, and that's an area that really is going to have an effect, because in some places we're actually there's signs of lot shortages, where people are, if construction gets going and some of those lots are coming offline, it obviously takes a number of years to get permits and to do land grading and the infrastructure for a subdivision. So if all of a sudden the lots that are available are sold out and there's no lots coming online or even being thought at all, we're going to have a gap there, and you could see those lot prices increase. So we're hoping that doesn't occur. Hopefully some of the changes that have made in the legislature and will continue to make this session will have an effect on getting those offline quicker. One thing that's not on here that might also be an issue, vacancy rates in cities of apartment buildings have been 95%. One thing that I continue to worry about is the affordability of small multifamily housing in rural areas. Right now, You used to be able to build a fourplex out in a town with no municipal water. You didn't have to have a sprinkler system. After some rule changes that took place in the legislature a few years ago, basically anything more than a 1 or 2 family home now has to have a sprinkler system. Which, if you're building a, I'm not talking about the 5-story apartment complex in the city of Madison. Those should have sprinklers. They had to have sprinklers before the rule change. But if you can, and they have a municipal water supply, and frankly, you can charge $1,200 for a 1-bedroom apartment in the city of Madison. You can't charge that for a 1-bedroom in the town of Newton. And how are you going to be able to, right now moving forward, to build new housing stock that's a fourplex, has to have a sprinkler system, has to have a pumping station. If you don't have municipal water in that municipality, it's very expensive. So that's one thing on the horizon that could also be a challenge moving forward. And finally, a labor shortage. Right now, David Crow is the chief economist for our National Association of Home Builders, saying basically it's not a problem right now, but it's something that they're definitely looking at. This was actually a quote from a Forbes magazine article. The bottom line is, people that might have been laid off that were in the construction industry have moved on. They were a carpenter on a crew, they got laid off, they couldn't find another job within their trade, so now they're doing something different. And if they have a secure job, are they going to come back? Some may, but you also are going to have probably a shortage of those types of folks once those businesses start to rehire again, and that could be a problem moving forward. There is a bill that's moving pretty quickly through the legislature to address some of these shortfalls and give some more funding to targeted programs within DWD. That's one thing that we're supportive of. We just want to make sure that once our memberships, once our members get back to work, they're going to have enough folks that are actually going to be available to hire. A little bit on past victories for the housing industry from last session. We had a good session. We had a strong session of reforms that passed the legislature and were signed into law. It was obviously a unique challenge to operate, especially in 2011 with everything that was going on in the state capitol. But really, we took the opportunity to pass a number of changes. A lot of them were what we kind of call do-overs. There were things passed in the final 2 years of the Doyle administration that we objected to and we fought against. Ultimately, we were not successful. We had an opportunity to address a number of those, especially in the state budget. Prevailing wage on infrastructure for new subdivisions. Years ago, there was no prevailing wage restrictions on any infrastructure that was paid for by a developer and then dedicated over to municipality. In the budget that passed in 2009, that got rolled into prevailing wage determination. Increased, honestly, this change had little effect in, say, Dane County, because every contractor that was doing that infrastructure was already paying prevailing wage. But in an area like Manitowoc or Sheboygan County or Winnebago County, where that wasn't as prevalent, this increased the cost of those new lots. The timing of this was good in the sense that not a lot of people were developing during that time. So not a lot of developers were forced to pay that prevailing wage. But now that has been fixed moving forward, so if there's lots that are going to come online, the infrastructure will not have to be covered under prevailing wage. Huge improvement last session. There was a cap on the code changes. The Uniform Dwelling Code is the code that is governs 1 and 2 family homes. In the past, there have been no restrictions on the cost of those code changes. Now, if a code change is over $1,000 for a new home and there's going to be more study of the impact on the cost, that basically has to go through a further scrutiny through both houses and the governor before it becomes law or becomes the code change. Elimination of the conversion fee on land. Again, this is a big one for development moving forward. So hopefully, if there are those lot shortages, 1 and 3 will help get those lots online quicker if there is a shortage moving forward. We reformed the Uniform Dwelling Code, the members on that. That was actually a bill that Senator Lightbaum offered. It was kind of a number of small changes that were in the Department of Safety and Professional Services. And that conversion fee provision actually was part of the budget, but Representative Jacques actually offered that as a standalone bill, and then they rolled that into the state budget. So 2 folks here very helpful in those changes moving forward. Finally, wetland reform, a big package of changes dealing with wetlands. Not saying that every single time there has to be a small wetland under 0.2 acres filled that it's going to be an automatic yes. It just sets up a process so you know going in there's time limitations and triggers, so you have a little more certainty in the process moving forward. And then finally, a special session bill that passed. A lot of people forget, obviously, with the start of 2011, there were, I think, 10 special session bills that were passed right out of the gate to start the session in 2011. A lot of them having broad bipartisan support, and that was one of them. Changing the process for administrative rules, giving the governor and the legislature more of a role in that process, and basically giving consumers and constituents more of an idea of that process and having the ability to chime in as things move along. So finally, real quickly to close, some of the things that we're looking forward to, again, further increase or make the climate for doing business, not only for the housing industry, but I think some of these for all business in the state. We're supportive of the property tax freeze that the governor has in the next state budget. The income tax cut is helpful not only for consumers that might be interested in looking at a new home or remodeling a home, but also many of our members are small businesses structured as LLCs, so that income tax cut is important to them as well. We're looking to expand the cycle for the review of the Uniform Dwelling Code. Right now, there's no set number for how long or for the number of years that you look at to review that. This would say there's 6 years, and if this law passed, you would start a review within 1 year and then kind of let that code sit. The reason behind that is pretty simple. Builders are building safe, affordable, energy-efficient homes, more so now than ever. It's a cost driver for state government to review that code, and it's expensive for the consumer a lot of times for these code changes to be made that have relatively little impact or little change on safety or the well-being of the homeowner. That bill, the 6-year code cycle, is a standalone bill. We have, I think, support. I think everybody, all the legislators that are here have signed on as co-sponsors of that bill. We actually have Republicans and Democrats on that bill. We support the bill, and the State Carpenters Union supports the bill. So it's lining up. Of course, I get scared when I say this, but it's lining up like this could be a bill that moves pretty quickly through the process with all of those different groups signing on of support. So we're hopeful to get that one done. Shoreline zoning after annexation is a bill that was around back in 2007, was vetoed by Governor Doyle. We're hoping to get more clarity on those annexations moving forward. And then further review of administrative rules. Again, our code, the wall bracing provision is something that a lot of builders here know about. The Uniform Dwelling Code, the council just sent out notice of improvements that they're going to be meeting here pretty soon to consider changes there. And then also looking at duplicate credentialing. Any builder that wants to build a building permit currently in the state has to have a 2-year 12-credit credentialing. There was also a rule that was put in 2009 that meant subcontractors had to also sign up for a credentialing. We fought that at the rule level. Representative Jacques working on trying to get that drafted as well. Maybe that'll be a standalone bill or something that we talk to those in finance for a budget provision as well. So that is really kind of the spiel as far as why we believe that housing is good for the economy. Some of the things that we're trying to get done here in the legislative session and things of that sort. Just real quickly, April 2013, we're working with the governor to proclaim that as New Homes Month. We'll have a number of different activities, not only from the state association, but local associations as well, to kind of promote that moving forward. We have 3. I've become a little more involved in the social media and communication aspect. Anybody can follow us on Facebook, or like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Otherwise, we have a blog as well. All of these things can be accessed through wistbill.org, which is our main website at WBA. So I'm happy to take any questions if you have any. Otherwise, thanks so much for having me.
How much did the bills passed last year? How much did you say? I think it was like $400 million.
Yeah, it was north of $400 million.
And that all affects the builders and...
Again, yeah, it's the cost, and it has obviously that trickle-down effect as well in the other industries that you mentioned. Charlie?
What would be some examples of cities that have taken action that you feel have been friendly to creating a better environment for home building, and specifically what did they do, since you have council members, mayor, city manager here?
Good question. I know Washington County, there were a number of municipalities that had pretty large lot size requirements, in excess of 3 acres for a lot to build a new home on, a minimum lot size. A number of municipalities have looked at lowering that. to get that down and create more opportunities for houses and greater density. A number of municipalities have looked at infill projects. The city of Madison, there's not a lot of land left in the actual city of Madison. I just know that obviously because I live in the area, but there's been a number of infill projects where they're actually cleaning up the site. There might have been one on West Wash or East Wash, is an old car dealer. They're cleaning up that site, building some multifamily. There's other places where they've built some, they've worked with Habitat for Humanity on affordable housing within the community as well. So I mean, those are two things that have, I think, hopefully encouraged growth in those areas, the infill lots and the decreasing the size of lots in some areas. Yes?
When was the conversion fee on land eliminated?
Conversion fee was eliminated in the budget in 2011, which I think the effective date of that portion in particular was July 1 of 2011. Yes?
Of the legislation you're currently working on, are you having any trouble, or is there any pitfalls in one or two of them that you could add to, or you could say some positive things about to try to increase awareness of it?
The ones I talked about here? Or?
Yes.
You know, I hope everything goes, that 6-year code we've had, again, you know, bipartisan support of those signing on. We'll see in committee if there's any problems moving forward. You know, the state budget is going to be, obviously there's a few things that are of particular importance to us. We'll try to get more pieces added to that. I mean, that's going to be, even if some members, I don't think I'm going out on a limb. I mean, all the Republicans will vote for the state budget, I believe, and all the Democrats will vote against it. And some Democrats might like some sections of it and probably will publicly say that, but I still think, you know, it's improving. We're getting back to where I think we're getting some bills like that 6-year code cycle that if you explain it and work hard enough, we've had a lot of member outreach where not only we have our lobby day in-person visits, but we also have an email system where we're encouraging members to email their members of the legislature to sign on to bills. That's having an effect. I mean, I think we're starting to see at least a little glimpse of things having, you know, bipartisan support. Both, you know, that bill is the best example. You have a construction, you know, trade union in support along with WBA. So I'm hoping that some of the things that we, at least that we do on our level, can continue in that regard, to where we're actually having standalone bills that have broad support and work it through the committee system and have a floor vote and ultimately, hopefully, have the governor sign on to it or sign them in law. Yes?
Now, administratively or existing law-wise, what is your view of the biggest impediment that remains?
You know, specifically to, I still think the wetlands is a good example. There was also a bill that I did talk a lot about on reg reform dealing with Chapter 30 permits. You know, we have never come and said, you know, we want to make a law that says every time that any member goes to the DNR, we should be assured of a yes answer. But it's more when we come to get a permit, you know, tell us what the playing field is that needs to happen. So getting more certainty in anything, whether it's the wetlands, and anything that we do, I think is one thing that we constantly hear. You know, we're not asking to be guaranteed a yes, but just tell us it's going to take X amount of days, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. If we have to redo something, a lot of the Chapter 30 permits in the past and other permits, the DNR could ask for changes, which is obviously their prerogative, but you'd ask for a change, the permittee would come back and give them the change, and then the clock would start all over again, and just kind of this never ending. It was like members have kind of said it's like we were being timed out, right? And you know, that if the answer is no, and absolutely you can't do what you want to do on this site, probably not going to be happy with that, but let's at least give us that answer so we can. And I think the legislature is going to continue to work on that. The Administrative Rule Committee is going to look at rules that folks have issues with. The Assembly Republicans have a big effort called Write the Rules, which they're asking members, regardless of what industry that they work in, to send, you know, those suggestions in, and they're going to take a look at them. All the committees in the Assembly are looking at rules, so that's an effort too that we're starting to, you know, I forget how many pages it is, but it's a huge, you know, the number of state statutes is a lot of pages. The A code is, I mean, like double that. So it's a huge endeavor, but very important, and it might take multiple sessions to get that. Yeah.
Brad, are you seeing better cooperation then from the DNR office? I mean, in that regards, I mean, you know, for a while there was a lot of bleeding was going on where people want to leave the state.
Yeah.
Because the effort wasn't there. I know the previous administration was doing a very poor job of trying to communicate. But you see that now under control and seeing a much better effort being And people are stating, I mean, businesses I know in Wisconsin have become, as in our last gathering, we talked about more increasing, they want to come back to the state to do business. I mean, we just report on that. Because
Yeah, I think, you know, there's been a huge amount of effort to try to get, you know, it used to be you'd start working on a project and you'd bring the DNR in when it was 3/4 of the way done, or you actually submit your permit and then you'd have that conversation. There's been a huge outreach with the current DNR to get somebody on their staff involved from day one to help, you know, from like a subdivision, if you can lay it out this way, you're going to have this issues, but if you make this turn here or whatever, have the road come in at a different angle, you're going to avoid, you know, maybe some problems over here with some wetland. But there's been a huge outreach of trying to get folks, and you know, frankly, there's probably some, and I think it's getting better, but some people probably were thinking, you know, do I really want to do this? You know, do I really want to start the conversation that early? But I think largely from what we've heard, it's been a very positive thing. I mean, there's actually sector specialists now in the DNR. So we have our own kind of sector specialists where there's an issue, and we encourage members, you know, early on in the process, check in with this gentleman. You know, he can come to your site, he can take a look, and that's one way to hopefully, you know, change the relationship between business and the DNR moving forward. Is that early contact? Yes, sir.
Brett, how much do your members dislike Dodd-Frank? And do you think that it plays a role as the housing market improves going forward?
You know, it does. We've had, you know, issues with, I mean, financing continues to be an issue. I mean, there's developers that I'm aware of that want to start new subdivisions, and they can't. And largely it's, you know, the relationships with bankers that they've had in the past have been positive, but when regulators are telling them new construction or development is not something we want, essentially want you in, and almost are kind of, you know, those rules that are set up are so rigid. I'm not an expert on Dodd-Frank, thank God, but you know, when those rules are so rigid, they can't get those loans to their consumers, you know, to the developer that they've known for 20 years. You know, that lot shortage that I talked about is something that could have a huge effect, because you need a bank to front that capital before you can move forward. And just on, you know, just the average consumer getting a loan, you know, we went from probably too much or too many people getting money was too easy. And I think most people would, you know, not all the good bankers in the room, of course, but some folks have specialized in that, to now where it's way too difficult. There's got to be somewhere in the